Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show. Today I'm going to tell you a story about this brother named Jaden, right? We called him J-Mac. Now, J-Mac, he had retired from the business, walked away from it, clean, scot-free, good brother. Had all his time in. Everybody respected him, loved him, looked up to him, thought he was that guy. You understand what I'm saying? But see, when he was within the fold, when he was in rotation, he was known kind of like me as a disciplinarian. No nonsense type dude, right? But he had reached that point to where it was time for him to walk away. And he walked away with all the esteem and all the praise that the brothers could muster for him. But let me tell you what happened in the time that he was gone. While he was gone, there was this other brother that took over, right? And this brother, he allowed all the things that J-Mac wasn't going to allow to happen. You had brothers getting robbed. You had brothers, you know what I'm saying, that was around there extorting. You had brothers doing all kinds of things. Nobody really looked at the mob the same way when J-Mac was in charge. Yeah, they feared him, but they also thought that they were two-faced. They even started to give the mob a nickname, the Two-Faced Mafia, because they'll laugh in your face and stab you in your back. Nobody respected them the way that they respected it when J-Mac was in charge. Now check this out. The violence had spread in this organization because J-Mac, he wasn't just the nine on that compound. I'm using that terminology loosely because they call it something else, but you understand what I'm saying. He was over the whole penitentiary system. The whole system, right? He had the whole penitentiary. So this other guy that ends up becoming the leader, he's got the whole prison. So the violence that's spreading is spreading throughout the whole system. Every prison, the so-called two-faced mafia was running rampant. All kinds of things. All they cared about was getting their money. They didn't care about what it looked like, what it made them look like. They didn't care about none of that. And everybody was wondering, when would it end? So now, the brother that was over the prison, he wanted to reach outside of the prison and he wanted to take over the streets. He wanted to be in charge of everything. And the violence that was contained to the penitentiary now was bleeding into the streets. And now we had an election. And a new governor came into office. Law and order. We're going to clean it up. This is going to end. So he appoints this new guy as commissioner over the prisons. And he tells this commissioner, get it straight. Clean up the prisons. Make this state safe again. So this is what the commissioner does. The commissioner, he hires people that he knows. People that come from the state that he's from. And he vows to clean up the mess that's been made. He vows that he would take back the prisons. And by doing so, he would also help make the streets safer. And he meant what he said. So when he hired his friends, the people that he knew, to take over the prisons, he hired a new commissioner. Like I said, the governor hired a new commissioner, and the commissioner, he hired new wardens. And he told these wardens, clean it up. Think outside the box. You got my full support on whatever you want. But there was this one warden that was the closest to this new commissioner. They had been friends for years, for decades. And he knew what the commissioner wanted. But after a week or so at the new prison that he was in charge of, he thought that it was going to take some doing to get this straight. The conventional ways of getting the prison straight wasn't going to work. Change some rules, get tougher on the population. That wasn't going to work. So he had to think outside the box. So what he did was he identified, he said, when was it straight? When was the prison system straight? And all the people, the employees, they said a few years ago, he said, what's going on with this two-faced mafia? He said, it used to be ran by this other guy. This other guy named, they called him J-Mac. J-Mac, he did his thing, but the prisons were safer. He didn't bleed over into the streets with all this nonsense. So the warden, he had decided, he said, look, this can be to our benefit in the short term. In the short term, not the long term, because we're not going to secede the prisons to any gain, but we can use this to our advantage. So the warden got all the information he could on J-Mac. Got all the information he could on J-Mac. Who is his family, the people that he loved, the people that he visited, the people that he talked to. And he was trying to find a way to get some leverage on J-Mac. But he couldn't find anything. J-Mac is squared all the way up, y'all. You understand? So check this out. This is what he did. J-Mac's celly had gotten in some trouble, coincidentally, at the right time. So he ended up going to the hole. So the warden, thinking outside the box, the warden had gotten some of the people that work at the prison to go find one of their most trusted, most loyal informants. Somebody that nobody knew about. That was so far undercover that nobody would think it suspicious if he ended up working for them. So they went and got this guy. And they put him in the hole. And the guy knew when he went to the hole, he said, something must be up. They must need my help. So while he's in the hole, they isolate him. They come in and get him in the middle of the night. It wasn't unusual in the hole because sometimes the internal affairs at this particular prison worked at night. So it wasn't unusual to see somebody being brought out at night. So they brought him out, and they brought him all the way out into the E-pod. They brought him in a section of the prison, in a section of the hole that they wouldn't be able, nobody could see. They wanted total privacy. And when they got him out there, he saw the warden. He saw the commissioner. He saw the captains and the lieutenants. And they all sat him down. They said, here, drink this, eat this. Gave him a nice old burger from McDonald's, nice old soda pop, and some French fries, plenty ketchup. And they said, look, we need your help. And while he was peeling the paper off of it and getting ready to eat, he said, what do you need me to do, warden? And the warden said, I need you to, when we let you out of the hole, I'm going to put you in the cell with J-Mac. He said, oh yeah, J-Mac is a good guy. He done left all that nonsense alone. And the warden said, we need him back. So the guy looked at him, he said, you need him back? He's like, yeah, we need to get him back involved in gang activities. So the dude looked at him, he said, he's not going to do that. He's turned his life over to the Lord. He's not going to do that. He said, well, that's what we need you for. He said, what can I do? I'm not a gamer. He said, we need some leverage. And then they handed the guy a package. Said, take this. Don't you open it. And you plant it in the cell when we put you in there. Because that's where you're going to be put at when we let you out of the hole in a couple of days. The warden said, can we depend on you? So the dude looked at the warden. He said, you know you can. Now the commissioner the whole time is standing over in the corner not saying a word. The guy don't even recognize that that's the commissioner. He just notices that nobody is talking other than the warden. And they're all looking at him. And a couple of people are writing things down. And then he says what all informants say. He said, what's in it for me? And the warden said, you like this McDonald's? He's like, I love McDonald's. He said, I'll make sure you eat McDonald's whenever you want to if you pull this off. He said, I'll consider it done, Ward. So a couple of days go by, and then they come to the hole and they let a lot of guys out. They give them their cell assignments. And this guy was assigned to J-Mac's cell. So when he gets into the cell, he introduces himself and he's talking to J-Mac, and J-Mac is talking to him, and J-Mac is trying to talk to him about the Lord. But he's got one thing on his mind. He's going to plant this bomb in there. He gonna plant the bomb. So he hides it. He finds a good spot and he hides it. Up under the rack in the corner, right up under J-Mac's rack, because he's on the bottom bunk. Stuffed up in there real nice. But not so far up in there that it can't be seen, it can't be gotten out. So he lets the lieutenant know, because that's what he was instructed to do, that everything is set. Then the lieutenant let the captain know, and then the captain let the warden know, and then that night, shakedown. So when everybody heard the word shakedown, they all panicked, jumped up, and you could hear pocket knives being slid out from under the doors and all this and that. But in J-Mac's cell, he slept soundly because he had nothing to worry about. So when the team came to the door, the Turk team came to the door, they knocked on the door, said, y'all two, get up. They yelled out, t-shirt, boxers, and socks. What that meant was strip down to that. When they stripped down to that, they had them step outside the cell. And when they stepped outside the cell, they brought the dog in, they ran the dog, and he jumped up on the bunk. And when he jumped up on the bunk, he jumped down off the bunk and tried to get up under the bed, and he got to barking. We got something in here, warden. They yelled out. The officer took the dog and put the dog out of the room, and then the officer got down on his back and wiggled up in there, crawling on his back, and he sees the pack. He grabs the pack, pulls it down, and hands it to the warden. He said, what is this? As he pulls J-Mac and the other guy back into the cell. J-Mac said, I've never seen that before a day in my life. That's not mine. He said, well, what is it doing under your bunk? He said, I have no idea. Now, the other dude, he's standing beside J-Mac. He said, it's not mine. I just moved in here. Y'all know that. It's not mine. J-Mac, knowing that he cleans the cell thoroughly every day, that wasn't in there before this guy came. He knew it wasn't in there. But being the old gangster that he is, he kept his cool. He kept his cool. And they locked both of them up, pending investigation. And while they're in the back, pending investigation, Internal Affairs comes over to see the guy, talks to him, tells him, look, we're going to let you out in a couple of days, so just lay low. Then he hands him a sack. The sack had 2 Whoppers in it with some French fries. He would have to deal with his own soda and drink the soda that's sold off the commissary because they didn't want to be seen walking in there with a McDonald's cup and a straw. So he leaned back and he was eating. Job well done, they said. Then they visited J-Mac, pulled him out of the cell, said, the warden needs to talk to you. So they put handcuffs on him and walked him out there. And when they set him down in front of the warden, there was a few other people in the room, but he couldn't make out their faces. He didn't recognize who they were. And the warden said, what are we going to do about this? And he slammed the package on the table in front of J-Mac. And J-Mac said, warden, you know that's not mine. So what do you want? And the warden said, I like that. Straight to the point. You don't play games. He said, I don't have time to play games. So I know you're up to something. So what is it? And then they start to talk about the violence in the prisons, the violence on the streets, and how the two-faced mafia was behind all of it and had been involved in all of the treachery for the last 5 years that's been going on in the state prison system. And J-Mac said, if you've done your homework, warden, you would know that I'm no longer a part of that. But I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because you knew at this facility, you're new to this state. I'm going to let you know myself, I don't get down no more. I've changed my life. The warden looked back at him, stood up. He said, that's what they all say. He said, but let me get straight to why we're here. He said, I need your help. J-Mac looked at him, he said, you could have asked me for my help as opposed to doing this, but what is it that you need me to do? He said, we want you to come out of retirement. Now J-Mac leaned back in his chair. He said, you want me to come out of retirement? The warden looked at him and said, yes, we need you to come out of retirement. We need you to take the organization back over and clean it up so that the violence can go down. He said, if you don't do this, it's going to get uglier. And J-Mac looked at him and said, that's not my problem. And besides, how would I be able to take the game back over? That's not how it works. So the warden looked at him, he said, you let us worry about that. But you be prepared if they come calling to step back in that role. Will you do that? And J Mac looked at it. He said, what's in it for me? And the warden said, that's what I'm talking about right there. It's always about the trade. It's always about the trade. He said, what do you want? He said, I want out of prison. I want out of prison. Because evidently, this is a big deal to all of y'all in this room. I don't know who y'all are on that back wall over there. I don't know what interest you have in this. But if you come to me, want me to do something like this, then this has to be coming from the top. Has to be. So like I said, Ward, what's in it for me? He said, I'm going to have to talk to my boss to see what's really going on. I don't know what I can offer you. He said, but would you like some McDonald's? He said, I'm not that cheap. He said, reserve that for your snitches and informants. I want my freedom. He said, you know we can't just let you out of prison. He said, but you can work on it and help me out. Take some of this time off me. Because if I step back into this, I'm going to be putting my life at risk for you. I'm going to be putting my life at risk. Because if they ever find out, I'm a dead man. And the warden looked at him. Then he looked over his shoulder. And then this guy, this big guy, walked out. And he said, if you do this for us, we'll make sure that we do whatever we can to get a few years knocked off of your sentence, but we can't just let you out. And J-Bank looked at him and said, who are you? And the man stuck his hand out and he walked all the way up to J-Bank. He said, I'm the commissioner. How you doing? J-Mac stood up to respect the man's position and said, I'm doing fine, son, but you didn't have to do it like this. He said, we do things a little different. Are you on the team? J-Mac looked at him. He said, if y'all can make it work and they come calling, I'll step back in that role. He said, but you do understand that to get things back right, it's going to take some doing. It's going to take some time. And it's going to take some head busting. Because at the end of the day, when it's as wild as this, they like it like this. They're not going back without a fight. They're not going back without a fight. So the commissioner looked at him and he said, well, if anybody can get it done, it's you. And if you can't get it done, it's going to be a bloodbath because we got to take these prisons back. He said, I understand, sir. He said, take me back to my cell. I'll wait on you. You make it happen. They come calling. I got you. So they took J-Mac to his cell, back to his cell in the hole. He's sitting in the cell on the bunk thinking about what he had just experienced. He had just met the commissioner over the whole Department of Corrections. The warden said they needed his help. How would he do it? He thought. How am I going to be able to get things back the way they were? He was unsatisfied with the way things had been the last 5 years with the Two-Face Mafia. He was upset about it, but he had nothing to do with it. So what was his strategy going to be, he thought? How am I going to do this? Now, he was still in contact with the guys, so he knew who was in charge at every facility. He knew who was up under them at every facility. Which one of these guys can I trust, he said. And he concluded he couldn't trust none of them. So he had to go back to his old crew. He had to go back to his old crew. But when he walked away, they walked away. But now he was going to have to convince them, without being totally honest with them, that they needed to come back. But he wouldn't do it until he was back in play. Because he knew then, once he called for them, out of loyalty, they would come. They would come. Now that's the conclusion of this episode. If you want to know how this thing plays out, you know what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to tune in to the next episode. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.
I'm getting so tired.